Part 25. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-san Buletinji. Chapter 251. Angzi's back, turned, the jumper shot, this angle is not very good, foul. Angzi caused Drummond Green's foul. On the court, Angzi walked to the free throw line. He played smarter for the shot just now. He turned around to squeeze Drummond Green. Green didn't make a shot. Then, with Angzi's mid-range shot, he basically scored with the ball. If Green made a shot, Angzi, just like just now, fouled Green with a false shot. Stepped to the free throw line and made 2 free throws. Angzi didn't celebrate and turned back to defend. Drummond Green was suffocated in his heart. After all, he was just using trash talking to provoke an 11, but an 11 directly committed a foul. Drummond Green suffocated his breath and wanted to hit Angzi on the offensive end, but now he still can't compare with Angzi. Green's defense is terrifying, and Angzi's defense is even more terrifying, and Green didn't get it. Any chance, unless he plays singles, but with Green's singles skills, he still thinks too much about Angzi's singles. So the aggrieved Green could only watch his teammates finish the ball, and Jared Jack took the shot. He broke through Mills' defense and rushed to the three-point line to take a jumper, but he didn't make it. Baines grabbed the rebound. The Spurs launched the attack slowly. Mills caught the ball and took control of the front court. It was Angzi. The top position of the arc was locked and he opened his hand for the ball. Mills passed the ball directly. Angzi now has a small status in the Spurs, at least the status is higher than Mills. Angzi wants the ball, Mills still has to give it, unless he can have a better chance of scoring, and more importantly, Angzi's post-up singles has gradually become a trusted scoring method for the Spurs. It was Angzi's back attack again, and Drummond Green was happy. This was his opportunity. By guarding Angzi's back attack, he could find his place. So now, Drummond Green stopped talking, and began to defend Angzi quietly and seriously. In high post singles, the hit rate is actually not very high. Even Angzi can only guarantee a hit rate of more than 40%. However, the hit rate of more than 40% is already very scary. Angzi beats Green with his back. Green defends. Also very serious, an 11 also has no bottom in his heart, so he can only play as far back as possible and try to get better scoring opportunities. After sitting and fighting for a few times, Angzi made some progress. The two were already standing near the free throw line, so Angzi began to sway from side to side. At this time, it was impossible to go further, and could only move Green away by fake action. Angzi swayed to the left, Green slanted to the left, Angzi extended a probing step to the right, and Green also took a small step to the right. When defending, Green was very cautious and shot a little. Unwilling to give up any space to Angzi. Suddenly, Angzi accelerated under her feet, supporting her entire body with her left foot, holding the ball in both hands, and taking 2 steps with her right foot. With 2 snaps, Angzi turned around. Right to the basket. Green hurriedly stepped across to block, but Angzi immediately dribbled the ball under the hip, then withdrew directly with his left foot, and made a step-back jumper. The action was very consistent. Green was swayed by Angzi's turning movement. When he reacted and rushed to block Angzi's shot, the basketball had already shot. Swish. Go in again. Drummond Green shook his hand in annoyance, but he still couldn't stop it. An 11 directly defeated Drummond Green with his backing skills. Angzi has a beautiful ball. He played singles with his back. After turning around, he took a shot, and then made a jumper with a step back. The entire offense, technical movements are very coherent. It can be seen that Angzi's back technology has improved greatly. You need to know the last season. Angzi hasn't had the technique of backing. As a result, Angzi's backing is not halfway through the season. It's the top level in the league. Yang Yi introduced Angzi's back in detail. He and K-Fan commented on this game. After the back-to-back goal, the Spurs once again opened up the point difference, and Angzi's scoring also came to 4 points, which was finally a shame. The game continued. Although the Spurs came off the bench in the second quarter, they still controlled the rhythm of the field. In the 5th minute of the second quarter, with a dead ball, Vich made another substitution. Tracy McGrady, wearing the Spurs number 1 jersey, is standing in the technical zone, waiting to appear. Tracy McGrady is going to play, this will be the first show of his Spurs career, K-Fan shouted immediately, and there was a burst of cheers from the AT&T Arena. After all, Tracy McGrady is a former All-Star player, and his popularity is still very popular. Full. Stepping on the floor of the AT&T Arena, McGrady walked step by step, walking slowly. Obviously, McGrady was very emotional when he stepped on the floor of the NBA game again. Tracy McGrady, who entered the NBA with the 9th overall pick in 1997, played for the Toronto Raptors and later played for the Magic, Rockets, Knicks, Pistons and Hawks. The Spurs are McGrady's 7th NBA. The team, and the live ESPN commentary also began to formulate McGrady. Then McGrady's joining will help the Spurs? Perhaps his debut will give us the answer. How does McGrady's joining help the Spurs? In fact, Vicky thinks very clearly that McGrady's body is seriously degraded, and none of the techniques that originally relied on the body can be used, such as dry three-pointers, such as a one-step change to a breakthrough, but some of the techniques that McGrady can now use are against the Spurs. Said it is still useful, such as passing the ball. That's right, Tracy McGrady's role in the Spurs is to pass the ball. Once on the court, Tracy McGrady took over the Spurs' control of the ball and began to organize the offense in the half-court. An 11 ran around and then received a pass from McGrady, but Green quickly rushed over, so an 11 made another pass, Dior received the ball inside, made a mid-range shot, and successfully hit the Spurs' first offense after McGrady's appearance. Although McGrady didn't have any data in the account, his pass found an 11, and then tore the Warriors' defense line. An 11 passed again, allowing Dior. He got an excellent call-out meeting, and finally hit a mid-range shot, which was regarded as McGrady's pass assist. K-Fan boasted about McGrady's passing, but from Angzi's point of view, McGrady's appearance actually replaced Manu Ginobili. Previously, this kind of ball was controlled by Manu, but Manu was in this game. In the starting lineup, he played for too long, so Vicky replaced Manu with McGrady, let McGrady replace Manu, and used a pass to play as a substitute. The second quarter quickly ended in the Spurs' offense. More than half of the 2 quarters, the Spurs were 54-45, leading by 9 points into the second half. The 9-point gap is not very big, so during the halftime, Mark Jackson has been encouraging the morale of the Warriors. According to Mark Jackson, if this game is won, the Warriors can get a transformation. For this team, for young teams, it is really important to win a strong team. Warriors, we were only behind by 9 points in the first half. This point difference is nothing for our 3-point team. At 3 3-pointers, so. In the second half, let us put our 3-pointer. Use 3-pointers. Defeat the San Antonio Spurs. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletnji. Chapter 252. In the second half, Angzi sat off the court to rest. The Spurs sent the main lineup, point guard Tony Parker, shooting guard Danny Green, small forward Leonard, power forward Dior and center Duncan. Novel rankings and the Warriors are also the main players, but the backcourt puts a combination of 2 point guards, Jared Jack and Curry partner in the backcourt, the small forward is Klay Thompson, the inside is Bogut and David Lee. For the first goal of the second half, Stephen Curry shot a 3-pointer with a one-step jumper through the screen, a slam hit. The Spurs responded quickly and Tony Parker made a mid-range shot and the point difference became 8 points. Then it was Stephen Curry, a step-back jumper, another three-pointer, and continued hitting with a scream. Duncan Cic hit the iron, Curry didn't make another three-pointer, the point difference became 5 points, and Leonard Cic subsequently didn't make it. The Warriors got a chance to further narrow the point difference. This time Klay Thompson made the shot. He ran back and got the open position, then hit the three-pointer again with a scream. In just 2 minutes, the Warriors scored 3 three-pointers, with only 2 points left. With a beep, Vicky called a timeout. This timeout is no longer possible. At the beginning of the second half, the Warriors' three-pointers obviously had the meaning of starting. The whole T arena was full of boos, yes. The Warriors celebrated three-point boos frantically, as well as boos dissatisfied with the Spurs' defensive performance. Well, let's talk about the game in the waiting meeting first. After a pause, Vich said in a very quick language. Wait, we will expand the defense and focus on defending the Warriors' three-pointers. At the same time, Tony, you have to control the rhythm. The current rhythm is too fast. The Warriors are almost chasing three-pointers. This rhythm is not good for us. We have to slow down the pace. There was a pause for a second, and Vich began to announce the substitution. Manu, you come on the field and replace Danny. Next, remember to pass the ball more offensively, don't be anxious. Well, Angzi stood on the side for a while. Now that there is nothing wrong with him, Vich is not going to replace himself, but just let the team's defense expand, focus on defending 3 points, and then replace Manu to help Parker control the rhythm together. In a word, in the view of Vich, these adjustments are enough to curb the current Warriors' scoring momentum. After the substitution, Manu scored as soon as he came on the court. He caught the ball and cut in, then stepped on the free throw line and hit an emergency stop jumper. Then, the Warriors' offense, the Spurs' defense expanded, and the focus was on the Warriors' three-pointers. This made it difficult for the Warriors to get so many open opportunities on the outside, so the Warriors could not score from the outside, so they had to attack the inside. Jarrett Jack's breakthrough. The basket successfully scored 2 points. The point difference was still 2 points. On the Spurs side, Leonard turned over and made a jumper. Next, the Warriors continued to try to find three-point opportunities on the outside, but there were not many opportunities. Until the 5th minute, Stephen Curry held the ball and rushed straight into the front court. Before he could stand firm, he immediately stopped and shot a long-range three-pointer. Tony Parker hurried forward to block, but the next second, swish. Go in. It's another three-pointer. Stephen Curry shook his head arrogantly, but at this time, he was also qualified to shake his head, because this three-pointer made the Warriors directly reverse the score. Beep. There was another clear whistle, and Vicky was helpless. In the third quarter, he called out the second timeout of the quarter. He had to adjust again. The Warriors' three-pointers took off, especially the Stephen Curry. Up to now in this quarter, the Warriors' offense is three-pointers, and three-pointers. If Vich can't find a better way to deal with the Warriors' three-pointers, especially Stephen Curry's three-pointers, then this time the Spurs are likely to lose the game. Lost. This is certainly not what Vich wants to see. The Spurs are in a critical period of catching up to the number 1 in the West. At this time, every game that can be won must be won. And, you play and limit Stephen Curry, understand. After a pause, Vicky looked at Angzi. Angzi was excited when he heard Vicky's words. He hadn't received such a difficult one for a long time. Defensive task, defending the arrogant Stephen Curry. Angzi is looking forward to it. The Spurs didn't make too many adjustments. In addition to replacing Angzi, Vich also allowed the Spurs to return to the initial defense. Except for Angzi against Stephen Curry, there is no need to care too much about the Warriors' three-pointers. Obviously, Veki has great trust in Angzi's defense, and standing on the court, Angzi also decided to repay Veki's trust with his performance. When he came out in the third quarter, the Spurs attacked first, and Angzi was in the third position on the offensive end, so he stayed at the flank and didn't move much. The cooperation between Manu and Parker on the outside quickly found a shot space, but the Warriors' defense was also very fast. The space in front of Manu was fleeting. At this time, Angzi moved. Crazy running beyond the three-point line, and 11 put his hands together, cooperated with Manu's cover, and then continued to withdraw. Klay Thompson, who was defending Angzi, abandoned Angzi and went directly to Manu, and actually emptied Angzi directly. Angzi immediately opened his hand for the ball, Manu passed the ball from behind, and the basketball flew into Angzi's hands, directly facing Klay's back defense. Swish. Go in. A three-pointer. The Spurs' counter-score. Is it because Veki changed to Angzi to pay back the Warriors with a three-pointer? It was ESPN who spoke about G. Williams, but the voice just fell off. He knew his guess was wrong. In the Warriors' offense, an 11 directly faced Stephen Curry with the ball in the second half. It turned out that the Spurs replaced Angzi to defend Stephen Curry. Looking at Curry, who is nicknamed Cute by domestic fans, Angzi directly added them one by one, and started defending from the second half. It was uncomfortable for Curry to be posted. This single full-court press made Curry extremely uncomfortable. After finally getting the ball to the front court, an 11 still did not compromise. His close defense left Curry with no room for shots. Therefore, Curry had to choose to pass the ball. Passing, Curry passed the ball casually. He first came with a crotch dribble, and then dribbled the ball behind him. Klay Thompson came out from the inside and was ready to catch the ball, but the moment Curry passed the ball behind, an 11 suddenly jumped out. Stretching his long arm, he broke the pass. Steal, G. Williams first yelled, then he saw Angzi fast as lightning, picked up the ball and rushed towards the front court. Chance for the Spurs. Angzi takes the lead. The Warriors have just reacted. It should be too late to defend. Sure enough, Angzi rushed directly to the front court and scored 2 points with a light dunk. Stephen Curry's pass was too loose, which allowed Angzi to seize the opportunity. Originally, G. Williams was very excited when he saw the Warriors explode and three-point rain started. As a result, Angzi stole Curry as soon as he came out. Here, so now he is full of pity. Yes, it's a pity that Stephen Curry's looseness. To be continued. 8. Wonderful Oriental literature provide hand-printed text version of the latest chapters of works such as Wudong Jian Kun and other works. Free download in text ebook format. Welcome to register for collection. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletinji. Chapter 253. After Angzi played, a three-pointer and a steal, one after another, not only helped the Spurs go ahead, but also helped the Spurs widen the point difference to 4 points. Stephen Curry stood in the other half, gritting his braces blankly, as if he didn't care about the steal just now. Curry received the ball from the backcourt. When dribbling the ball, as long as Angzi didn't step forward to interfere, Curry's dribble was still so careless. An 11 didn't even think about another steal, because an 11 knew that as a point guard, Curry's dribble was top-notch in the NBA. He had just made a mistake because he was too careless. Just as G. Williams said, Curry's luck, the ball and passing are too loose. But this kind of looseness, when he suffers a loss, he will not continue to loosen up. It seems that Curry's dribbling is still so careless, but Angzi knows that this is just Curry's dribbling style. The result is either a defensive loss or a foul. Therefore, Angzi chose to defend Curry very conservatively. Curry can choose to break through. Anyway, the Spurs have already contracted inside. If Curry wants to shoot 3 points, I'm sorry, Angzi, who has the physical advantage, can directly slap Curry. 3 points inside. Of course Stephen Curry will not give up the offense. Angzi's defense is slightly less intense than before with the ball. After all, Angzi also has to take care of the referee's feelings. The referee will not be able to stand such big moves, let alone Curry now. He looks like a child. If Angzi is still such a big move, it will be a bit of a bully to the child. Angzi's actions are much smaller, and Curry has more opportunities, but there are not many opportunities outside the three-point line. After all, Angzi's focus is on the three-pointer. Curry started to change direction and sway people crazy, a dribble under the crotch followed by a high-speed change of direction. Angzi still made up. Then Curry made another breakthrough. Angzi stepped back and blocked it, so Curry found a chance. Step back. Seeing this scene, Angzi took a big step forward, and then took off almost at the same time as Curry. Curry's three-pointer was quick, but Angzi's reaction was quicker. A big hand directly covered the path of the basketball. The basketball in the air paused and then fell straight. Blocks. Angzi's defense is everywhere. The moment the basketball fell, the at-end amp, T arena exploded, and there was a tidal wave of cheers. Stephen Curry's three-pointer disappeared under Angzi's defense. This big cap will let Stephen Curry understand that in front of Angzi's defense, don't think about offense, and quickly pass the basketball in your hand. At-end amp, T arena's on-site commentator also shouted. Angzi's defense suddenly stopped the Warriors' offense, which could not help but excited the Spurs fans. Next, Stephen Curry struggled under Angzi's defense. In the final analysis, Stephen Curry did not have the kind of personal scoring ability against the sky at this time, and it is difficult for the Warriors under Mark Jackson to create for Curry better score opportunities. Curry misfired, the Warriors' three-point rain went out, and the Spurs began to regain lost ground through offense. Waves of offenses began to expand their lead for the Spurs. However, until the end of the game, the Spurs' lead was not large. They only won 10 points and won 109-99. Of course, this victory is also precious to the Spurs, because they were almost beaten by the Warriors. Defeated. In this game, Angzi performed very well on the defensive end. Curry, who guarded against the runaway, made great contributions to the Spurs' victory, but on the offensive end, Angzi's performance was average, with only 2 backs and 1 in the entire game. The three-pointer and the dunk after the steal, 4 took Angzi 10 shots, 4 of 10 shots, and 2 free throws, eventually scoring 11 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals and 2 blocks. The data is still comprehensive. After the game, although he lost the game, Curry's behavior was still uncomfortable. He directly spit out his braces, and then staggered to the sidelines. On the sidelines, Angzi was being interviewed by Abby, and a little kid suddenly appeared behind him. The kid patted Angzi on the shoulder, and then directly interrupted the interview. "And, you are too shameful to show off your affection on the sidelines." Angzi looked at Curry with an innocent look and had a funny meal in her heart. Seeing that the two were going to talk about something, Abby waved her hand and went to interview someone else. "Stephen, you are still young, you may not understand this yet." Stephen Curry's face is dark. "Am I still young? Am I better than you?" Curry Angzi was a few months old, and both were born in '88. The difference is that Angzi was born in October, while Curry was born on March 14th. "And, I didn't expect to see you for so long, your defense has improved again." Angzi's face is full of black lines. "Why did you interrupt my interview just to say this?" But Angzi thinks about it carefully. "My defense hasn't improved either." "But Wait and I will make progress. Well, it turned out to be here to speak harsh words. Angzi waved his hand. Okay, then I am waiting for you. After Curry let out the cruel words, he turned his head one step at a time and left to see how it looked like a pupil who just graduated from the society. Curry is gone and Klay Thompson is here again. The two played against each other last season, but there was no direct match in this game. And, long time no see, this time the conversation between the two was much more normal. The two shook hands, and then hugged. Long time no see, Klay, you played well today. This time I changed to Angzi to encourage Thompson. But Thompson is not a good baby, and he hit back directly, and, so are you. The defense is very good, which makes Steven a headache. Angzi touched his nose. It seems that the Warriors players all look honest, but they are actually very cunning. The game is over, and on the way home Angzi received a call from Ivo Clark. The UAE's NBA contract has come to fruition. And, yes, they are still talking about it now. The Houstonians hope to sign Yi to increase their internal strength. I don't want a high contract. Yes, let's talk about additional terms, bonuses, etc. Yes, basically. I'm sure, there will be news tomorrow. Ivo Clark gave a general idea. Angzi also knows the situation on the UAE side. UAE finally decided to sign with the Rockets. This decision was also due to Angzi's suggestion. Angzi's idea is very simple. The Rockets are currently short of people. In the summer, the Rockets wanted to show up, but they did not expect Harden to be dug out. All of a sudden, the Rockets had hope of making the playoffs, but most of the time, the team's players are gone, so the remaining players can only be reused, including Patrick Patterson at the power forward position. To say that this Patrick Patterson, in terms of strength, he is close to the starting, but it means that Patterson actually has no starting strength, and no starting strength, which means that Patterson's starting position is unstable. Yes, so for the UAE, his Chinese identity, coupled with the position of the power forward, and the space-based style of play at the fourth position, at least can stand a firm foothold in the Rockets. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuan-San Buletinji. Chapter 254. On the afternoon of the second day after the game, Angzi had just finished training. When he swiped his phone, a headline jumped out. The UAE official announced the signing of the Rockets, and the terms of the contract have not yet been announced. Angzi, who had quick eyes and quick hands, clicked directly in. On the afternoon of January 19, US time, the Houston Rockets and the Chinese basketball player Arab League held a press conference in Houston, announcing that they had reached a contract with the Arab League and will fight next. The specific contract terms have not been announced. Seeing this news, Angzi smiled. Angzi did not ask about the specific contract terms, but he probably knew that the US League signed with the Rockets for a year, and the annual salary is about 2 million yuan. For the UAE, this one-year contract is the best choice, because he can have enough opportunities to prove himself. Once he proves himself this season, the UAE's new contract next season will not be 2 million. Not enough. January is gradually coming to the end, and the voting for the All-Star Weekend is coming to an end. This season, because of Angzi's outstanding performance, in China, there are many fans chanting the slogan of putting Angzi into the All-Star, frantically voting for Angzi on major portals, but the results of the previous rounds of voting have been announced. The votes obtained were only tens of thousands of votes. However, the official explanation is that overseas votes are not yet counted, and overseas votes will not be counted until the start of the All-Star game. But Angzi didn't care. He didn't want to participate in the All-Star. Even in his heart, Angzi also prayed that domestic fans would not really vote him into the All-Star. After all, from Angzi's point of view, if he really enters the All-Star, with Angzi's true strength, he will become the laughing stock of the United States. Of course, there are always a few players like Anzi who squeeze into the All-Stars every year in the All-Star game, but they are all in the East. If the number of stars is not enough, they will make 1 or 2 rounds, but it is far different in the West. There are too many stars in the West, and the 12-man roster for the All-Star team is not even enough. Anzi still wants to enter the All-Star with his true strength, and he still disdains when he is voted in by the fans. On January 25, after the Spurs defeated the Eagles, 76ers, and Hornets, they won 6 consecutive victories, and then they challenged the Mavericks in Dallas. Anzi knows through Evo Clark that the Mavericks had asked for Anzi before, but the final offer was rejected by Vicky, but DeWin Blair was still traded to the Mavericks. This Anzi's former teammate had a good time after coming to the Mavericks. Uncomfortable, the average playing time is less than 5 minutes per game, directly from the stable rotation of the Spurs, to become the Mavericks' drinking fountain manager. Before the game started, Anzi greeted DeWin Blair, "DeWin, long time no see." And the two shook hands and hugged. "How about it? I heard that you rejected San Antonio's contract extension. Are you planning to leave?" An 11 frowned, then shook his head. "And, I think you'd better leave as soon as possible. Look at you now. You obviously have the starting strength, but you can only play as a substitute." DeWin Blair also shook his head, seeming to sigh for Anzi. And Zikiang laughed a few times. DeWin Blair's attitude was a bit strange, he seemed to have a bad impression of the Spurs suddenly, maybe the Spurs traded him to break his heart. Without saying anything to DeWin Blair, Anzi ended the warm-up and returned to his position. The game quickly began. The Spurs returned to the regular starting lineup: point guard Tony Parker, shooting guard Danny Green, small forward Kawhi Leonard, power forward Boris Diaw, and center Tim Duncan. The Mavericks starting lineup is point guard Darren Collison, shooting guard Mayo, small forward Sean Marion, power forward Dirk Nowitzki, and center Chris Kaman. The Mavericks have a poor record this season. They lost 24 of the first 42 games. In the highly competitive West, the Mavericks fell out of the playoffs early. Although there is still a chance to catch it back, so this game is Rick Carlisle, the Mavericks coach, is considered a top priority. Rick Carlisle is the most adaptable head coach in the league. Last season, he led a team of veteran Mavericks to defeat the Heat and win the championship. Last season, the championship lineup was dismantled. Next, still led the team to the playoffs. However, this season, the Mavericks continued to tear down the championship lineup and introduced a group of new players, but the effect was not very good. Rick Carlisle was also very worried about this. The game began quickly. The Spurs were determined to win, and the Mavericks were unwilling to lose. So a fierce game began at the American Airlines Center Stadium. The opening game is the Mavericks' right to the ball. Darren Collison's dribble is very stable. The Mavericks' offensive style is a positional attack. The team's scorer gets a jump shot through a high pick and roll, so Kaman directly the inside line was pulled out. Darren Collison made a quick breakthrough, thrown off Parker through the screen, stopped a jump shot and hit the first goal of the opening. Then, the Spurs attacked and beat the Mavericks. Vicky didn't make too many changes. In Vicky's view, against the current Mavericks, with the Spurs' normal strength, they can easily win. Therefore, the Spurs' offense is a slow attack, which does not mean to restrain the Mavericks at the tactical level. The Spurs' first goal, Tony Parker broke through with the ball, Darren Collison posted defense, and a cross screen by Boris Diaw and Parker immediately created a gap. Tony Parker makes a long jump shot. Bang, didn't enter. Inside Kaman took off the rebound, the Mavericks turned around and shot a wave of counterattacks. Mayo quickly broke through with the ball and made a layup before the Spurs fully returned to defense, 40. The Spurs' offense is still not rushed, and it seems that a 4-point lag in the opening game is not a big deal. It was Tony Parker who cut in with the ball and quickly attracted a double team. After a scoring ball, Tim Duncan made a mid-range jumper. 24. Vicky off the court clapped his hands, but the Mavericks were still resolutely attacking. After Darren Collison rushed to the front court with the ball, a pick-and-roll screen shot directly out a three-pointer, a scream, and a crisp basketball. The sound of wiping the net immediately drew a violent cheer from the American Airlines Center. 27, Vich frowned, but he still didn't speak. The Spurs' offense was still the same, looking for opportunities by running slowly at halftime. Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard's off-the-ball pick and roll, there was an open corner in the bottom corner, Parker's pass came immediately, and Danny Green made a three-pointer jumper. With a bang, there was another cheer from the US Airlines Center. The Mavericks grabbed the rebound, and then seized the opportunity to counter-attack again. It was Mayo who scored the ball. He made a jump shot from the middle distance and made a two-pointer. 92. The Spurs fell behind at the beginning, and the situation was not so good. Vicky shouted from the sidelines, "Play your offense. Defense puts pressure on them. But it's still useless. Maybe it's because the feeling of hitting the iron will be contagious." This time, Kawhi Leonard, who got the open opportunity, went on to hit the iron. In the end, Marion jumped out from one side and grabbed the second rebound. The Spurs' retreat was fairly timely this time, but the Mavericks still tore through the Spurs' defense through a slow positional battle. Nowitzki's mid-range jumper made an easy hit. 112. Next, the Mavericks unexpectedly played a smooth offense, but the Spurs, subject to poor hand feeling, missed consecutive shots. Vich had to replace Manu Ginobili in advance, but the score was already behind. In the second half of the first quarter the Spurs trailed by 12 points in 16-28. Yang Yi, who explained this game at Yanguo, couldn't help but sigh, "No, the Mavericks are not. Although the results are poor this season, you have to lie down. Hitting others can also scratch you, so the Spurs must get serious as soon as possible, otherwise the game will lose." As Yang Yi said, the Spurs must be serious, but the main force feels bad, and Vich waited for 2 more rounds. When the score difference was pulled to 15 points, he had to call a timeout. "Who are you guys?" After a pause, Vich looked at these players who were 15 points behind the Mavericks, and suddenly came out this inexplicable sentence. As a result, Duncan responded directly and cooperatively. Tim Duncan, graduated from Wake Forest University, played for 16 seasons. The Spurs bench quickly let out a few chuckles, and Vicky, who was still stern, showed a slight smile. Then he clapped his hands. "Okay, your hand feels bad, let's adjust it as soon as possible, and, you play, replace Kawhi. Corey, you play, replace Tony. Remember, next, our success rate in the offense, the defense will ignore him, and play out the offense we should have, defeat the Dallas People defense." To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletnji. Chapter 255. Angzi and Corey Joseph were put on the field. There is nothing to say about Angzi's appearance. Angzi should have played at this time. It is Corey Joseph. Since Patrick Mills came last season, Corey Joseph has gradually lost his position and was once delegated to the NBDL. His playing time has not improved this season, averaging less than 7 minutes per game. But now, Vich replaced him in the first quarter. The reason can be imagined. Darren Collison showed a very good state, so the better defensive Corey Joseph got the opportunity to play. The lineup on the Spurs field became point guard Corey Joseph, shooting guard Manu Ginobili, small forward Angzi and Dior, and Duncan still inside. The Mavericks also made substitutions. Their starting line lacked three-point firepower, so they replaced Vince Carter at this time when they needed to continue to expand their advantage. Old Carter is no longer the half-man and half-god of the year, but the current situation is slightly better than that of McGrady. At least in the Mavericks, Carter can get a stable playing time, basically equivalent to the role of the sixth man. As soon as Angzi came out, he faced Carter, but the offensive ball was in the hands of the Spurs, so when he came on the field, the situation on the court was Angzi attacking and Carter defending. The Spurs' previous offense was not good, which was somewhat related to the poor state of Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard. Of course, Tony Parker didn't feel very good, so after several substitutions, these three positions all changed a circle. Finally, the offense was a bit threatening. Angzi stayed in the bottom corner, and Carter did not leave. Angzi is not Danny Green. He has a three-pointer, especially an open three-pointer, and has always been very accurate, and there has never been a status statement. After staying in place for a few seconds, Angzi came out from the bottom corner and approached the free throw line. Ginobili made a pick and roll for Ginobili, who was holding the ball. Ginobili threw off Mayo through the screen and stopped making a jump shot. Get 2 points. Manu's state is still very good, 2 points easily hit, the points difference has also been reduced to 13 points. The Mavericks offensive. Although Vicky did not emphasize defense, the Spurs strengthened the defensive end. Angzi defended Carter. Old Carter had no chance to play. He could only run back and forth between the bottom corner and the top of the arc. Darren Collison was looking for an opportunity from the outside. He dribbled a few steps with the ball, and then accelerated and broke through from Corey Joseph. Joseph was close to Collison, and come on quickly moved to the free throw line. With the pick and roll screen, Collison successfully shook off Joseph, rushed into the inside, 2 strides out, avoiding Duncan's supplementary defense, holding the basketball, and sending the basketball to the hoop. Darren Collison, who was in excellent form, scored 2 more points, and the difference between the two teams was still 15 points. Ginobili took the ball into the front court and Angzi also started to run. Old Carter was still old after all and followed Angzi, but Angzi's several sudden reverse runs made Old Carter a little bit unable to keep up. After several trips, Angzi ran out of an empty seat. Inside the three-point line near the sideline, Angzi gets a vacancy. At this time, Old Carter was still 2 or 3 steps away. Ginobili's pass seemed to have eyes long, he passed a quick pass from behind, directly to Angzi's hands. Wow, an exclamation sounded from the US Airlines Center, but in this exclamation, Angzi jumped up and shot. The ball is in. 2-pointer, Angzi scored the first point of the game. 2-pointer, Yang Yi, who explained the game, had some regrets. Unfortunately, Angzi's shot was only a 2-pointer. For the Spurs, a 15-point lag is not so easy to chase, unless they can make a 3-pointer. Yang Yi in the CCTV live broadcast room was still regretting, but Rick Carlisle on the sidelines began to make small adjustments one after another through his gestures. The Spurs couldn't understand it, but the Mavericks players could understand it. Soon, the Spurs discovered that the Mavericks' offense had changed. It was still Darren Collison who took the ball, but it was Dirk Nowitzki who mentioned that the high position was accepted. So the Spurs still tried to defend Darren Collison's breakthrough. When Collison broke through, they directly 2 people. Containment, and Nowitzki was directly missed. After the pick and roll screen, Collison scored the ball, and the high-ranked Nyo Tienwang directly shot a jumper. After a clear scream, the Mavericks offense scored another 2 points, and the point difference was still 15 points. The last goal of the first quarter was Ginobili, who broke into the interior and succeeded in a layup. In the end, the Spurs narrowed the point difference to 13 points at the end of the first quarter. 13 points behind in a single quarter. For the Spurs, their performance in this game was catastrophic. Fortunately, their offense has stabilized in the second half of the first quarter. Then they only need to guard against the Mavericks' offense. You can use the fastest speed to recover the score. Vicky took advantage of the rest of the quarter and began to arrange the second quarter's play. In the second quarter we continue to maintain our offense. Patrick, You play, replace Corey, Aaron, Thiago play, replace Tim and Boris. Next we have to strengthen our defense, guard against the Dallas offense, and then make our shots to get the score back. On the Mavericks side, Rick Carlisle is indeed the coach with the strongest on-the-spot adjustment in the league. In a few words, he made another adjustment to the Spurs offense, shrink the defense and focus on Manu Ginobili's breakthrough. The second quarter started quickly. The Spurs advanced and the Mavericks sent their bench lineup. The point guard was Darren Collison. Collison was in good shape in this game. Rick Carlisle must make good use of Collison. Vince Carter moved to the position of shooting guard, and the small forward was another substitute for the Mavericks, Jack Lauder, a rookie this year. It is said that the template was Anxi when he entered the NBA. Inside, Nowitzki continued to play, plus Elton Brand guest center Anxi played against Jack Lauder. This is also a defensive small forward, and one hand is not stable. 3 points. Anxi didn't know that Jack Lauder's template was him when he participated in the draft, but Jack Lauder knew, so when he saw Anxi, he was excited. In addition, before going on the field, Rick Carlisle gave Jack Lauder a face-to-face opportunity to ask him defend Anxi, don't let Anxi have an open three-pointer. The Spurs' first goal and the Mavericks' defensive changes made the Spurs' offense feel difficult. Manu's breakthrough became stagnant. With the help of Aaron Baines's screen, Manu cut into the interior and faced Brand's defense. Vote for a CIC. With a bang, he shot the ball and hit the iron. Actually didn't enter. Vici stood up on the sidelines. He found that he had encountered a difficult opponent, Rick Carlisle. Every adjustment of Rick Carlisle was a direct poke at the pain of the Spurs. Defense. Defense, Vici shouted loudly. He missed the first goal in the opening game. The next defense must be done well, otherwise the Mavericks will further expand the point difference. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletnji. Chapter 256. This site has opened a novel subscription function. You can subscribe to your favorite novels. If there are updates to the subscription novels, we will notify you by mail as soon as possible. Remember to set up your email address. Jack Lauder's defense is very strong. This is what Anxi felt after playing against Jack Lauder a few minutes later. Because Anxi discovered that Jack Lauder was marking him from the inside out. Unless Anxi played singles, he really didn't want to get any chance of scoring. Jack Lauder's physical fitness is also very good, with a height close to that of a power forward, and very good athletic ability. Coupled with the three-pointer that has been shown before, Anxi suddenly discovered that this Jack Lauder is keeping up with himself last season. So similar. However, Anxi also found that the Spurs' situation was getting worse. Rick Carlisle's adjustment pinched the Spurs 7 inches. After a few minutes in the second quarter, the Spurs could only rely on Patrick Mills to score. The misery. As a result, the points difference has been further expanded. When the scoring gap widened to 20 points, Vicky on the sidelines was already on the verge of running away, and an 11 also sighed. He felt that at this time, he should try to stand up. In the Spurs offense, Patrick Mills held the ball to the front court. Facing Darren Collison's defense, Mills accelerated his pace and wanted to break through. At this time Anxi pulled out and stood at 45 degrees on the left, with Jack Lauder stuck behind him, and then reached out for the ball. Mills was stopped by Darren Collison. The breakthrough was not considered a success, so as soon as he saw Anxi asking for the ball, he hurriedly passed it. Anxi's backup singles. The Spurs are not doing well right now. Anxi took the initiative to ask for the ball to see how he would play. On the sidelines, Vich paced irritably back and forth, seeing the Spurs about to usher in a fiasco. For the Spurs, who have never lost a big point this season, a fiasco is unacceptable. On the court, Angzi started a post-up singles, and Vicky stopped and folded his hands on his chest. It seemed that if the situation was wrong, he would call out the timeout that he held in his hand. Back, Jack Lauder's defense is very good. As Yang Yi explained, Jack Lauder's defense is very good. Facing Angzi's defense, he did not show any flaws. However, the flaws need to be found by the offensive players themselves, so an 11 dribbled the ball with his back and shook it to the left. Jack Lauder quickly turned and blocked it. At this time, an 11 turned straight and faced the basket. High backs, compared to low backs, the most important thing is that singles players can make more changes. For example, in the current Angzi, after shaking Jack Lauder to the left, Angzi turned directly, and then squeezed Jack, who lost his center of gravity. Lauder rushed towards the penalty area. "This is Angzi's breakthrough," Yang Yi shouted directly, "a rare breakthrough." He rushed directly to the inside of the Mavericks. The inside line of the Mavericks was very empty, because in order to contain Ginobili and Mills, Brand and Nowitzki both withdrew, so Angzi was smooth in front of him. He increased his speed and ditched directly. Jack Lauder. Elton Brand made up for the basket, but when he ran to the basket, an 11 had already jumped up. With a muffled bang, Angzi directly collided with the old Elton Brand. The muscles collided with the muscles, and in the next moment, the winner was directly divided. The extremely powerful Angzi squeezed directly over, and the Mavericks fans on the sidelines could only see that Elton Brand was crushed by Angzi at the moment he took off and fell directly to the ground. With a loud noise, the entire US Root Arena was shocked. Cacao. Unstoppable Angzi. The people of Dallas are stupid. The people of Dallas have no voice. Angzi's dunk. This is Angzi's dunk. When the major commentators on the sidelines screamed hard, the basket was still shaking, and the US Airline Arena was already silent, and all the voices disappeared. With another creak, Angzi landed on the hoop. The boo reacted at this moment, and it instantly filled the entire arena. It was earth-shattering, and the roof of the stadium seemed to be overturned. The boo even covered the referee's whistle. Elton Brand fouled the ball just now. He blocked the foul, because before defending Angzi, Brand was moving, and Brand wanted to deal with this. He raised an objection to the foul, but he is now dumbfounded. He was detained by Angzi and then landed heavily. He has not recovered yet. The Dallas fans on the sidelines were very excited. In order to calm the incident, the referee hurriedly invited Angzi to the free throw line. However, the moment Angzi walked to the free throw line, the boos that had gradually become smaller suddenly became louder, and there were several curses against Angzi. With a crisp sound, Angzi quickly completed the free throw, hitting the free throw, 2-1. An additional penalty hit. Angzi used an unstoppable dunk to directly smash the Mavericks' defense, and the point difference was reduced to 17 points. The 17-point difference means that the Spurs still need to work hard, and the lead is still the Mavericks. The Mavericks' offense was still Darren Collison with the ball. Brand was replaced and Dewan Blair played. He pulled to a high position and gave Collison a pick-and-roll screen. Then rushed inside. Patrick Mills ate ashes behind Darren Collison and watched Collison rush to the hoop. Darren Collison's breakthrough, he was super amazing in this game. Look at this goal. He is going to lay up. The voice of the commentator on the sidelines was louder than ever, lay up. But then, the sound stopped abruptly. Pop, the crisp sound echoed in the center of the American root. Angzi. It's Angzi. He appeared in that position and overshadowed Darren Collison. A second later, the sideline commentator became excited again, but he slowed down for a while. The offense was over. Angzi the blocked shots ended the Mavericks' offense. Block. An 11 appeared in the most critical position, and his sudden defense against Darren Collison returned without success. After the big hat, an 11 shouted excitedly, and had a chest bump to celebrate with Aaron Baines on the inside. With a button and a cover, the Spurs directly beat the morale out. This block failed to control the basketball, so the ball is still in the possession of the Mavericks, but only 5 seconds of offensive time are left, so after the baseline ball was sent, Nowitzki, who received the ball, jumped directly, but was caught by SP Little, interfered. Without a score, the Spurs forced a rebound and returned to the offensive end. An 11 reached out for the ball again. Still playing high post singles, Jack Lauder was serious in defense, but seriousness is not enough. Angzi just sits and fights twice, then turns around and makes a jumper, which is another 2-pointer. Angzi began to take over the game. After scoring 5 points in a row, the Spurs reduced the point difference to 15 points. A little PS, a little burst tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, to be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletnji. Chapter 257. This site has opened a novel subscription function. You can subscribe to your favorite novels. If there are updates to the subscription novels, we will notify you by mail as soon as possible. Remember to set up your email address. The Dallas people were already impressed by Angzi, and after a dunk and a shot, Angzi took over the Spurs offense. From the middle of the second quarter, the Spurs began to chase points gradually from Angzi's outbreak. Angzi's back, turned around, no jumper. A breakthrough. A layup. It's still Angzi, or his back. It's incredible. In this game, Angzi seems to have used all of his family's strength. With this shot, he turned back and then withdrew a jumper. He actually hit a 3-pointer. Angzi, back in high position, he didn't come by himself, he passed the ball, Patrick Mills reversed the run, and he lay up directly after receiving the ball. In fact, from the second quarter, although the Spurs once again fell into the Mavericks' rhythm, the offense was only another player who could stand out. Manu Ginobili was locked and Angzi was blocked by Jack. Lauder is on defense, with 2 blue collars inside, so the Spurs can only rely on one Patrick Mills for their offense. Naturally, the offense is unfavorable. And when Angzi stepped up, with the Mavericks' defense, it was a little stretched. In this way, Angzi alone led to the recovery of the entire Spurs offense. In the second quarter, the Spurs did not chase points fast, but they managed to catch up to 10 points from the original 20 points. At halftime, the Spurs were 55-65, 10 points behind. In the entire second quarter, Angzi scored 13 points alone, plus 2 points in the first quarter. Angzi has scored 15 points in this game. In the second half, the Spurs and Mavericks did their best, and Angzi, who was in good shape, also squeezed Leonard and continued to play. However, at the beginning of the second half, Angzi didn't have many chances. Because there were more main players and more points, Angzi didn't need to stand up at all, so Angzi took an occasional shot and spent most of the time on defense. The two teams gradually tied in the third quarter, but the Mavericks still have the advantage, but Rick Carlisle on the sidelines has already frowned, obviously dissatisfied with the sudden turn of the situation on the court. The final quarter of the game began. At this moment, the score between the two sides is 80-84, and the Spurs are 4 points behind their opponents into the final quarter. Such a lagging gap, compared with the 20 points in the first half, is already a huge difference. The Mavericks players are also depressed. In today's game, they started very smoothly. The offensive end kept scoring, and the defensive end appeared all kinds of surprises. With a little more than a quarter, the score difference was extended to 20 points by them. Then, Rick Carlisle also made the most secure adjustments. The Mavericks did not seek to continue to expand the score, but only wanted to be able to control the situation on the court. They did it once. But the sudden emergence of Angzi made it all shattered. First, a button, and then a big cap, directly hitting the Mavericks. The Spurs also took advantage of the situation and started chasing points. After the fourth quarter, the point difference was only 4 points left. There is a gap of 4 points, and there is one remaining period in the game. This gap is no longer called a gap. The fourth quarter of the game is officially underway. At the beginning, the two sides started the most tragic fight. Every attack and defense, punch to the flesh, almost all of them were playing desperately. Bang! 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 Inside Dirk Nowitzki singled Duncan. After several dribbles, he turned around and the iconic Golden Rooster was used independently and scored 2 points with a scream. Then, after the Spurs and the Mavericks entangled for another 20 seconds, Anzi from the outside made a three-pointer. In this way, the two teams fought frantically on both offensive and defensive ends for such a small point difference. The scores of the two sides rose alternately, and there was no intention to pull apart. With the last 3 minutes left in the game, the score between the two sides was 109-107, and the Spurs were still 2 points behind. Parker took possession of the ball and began to break through, but when he broke into the post, he was almost intercepted by Sean Marion. He quickly put away the basketball and passed it to Ginobili, who quickly entered through the air cut behind him. Ginobili attracted the defense and quickly passed the basketball back to Anzi. Anzi was on the outside, adjusted a bit, and took a three-pointer. The Spurs passed back and forth several times and finally opened the Mavericks' defense. Anzi's three-pointer was easy and no one was defending. Swish, a successful hit. 3 points. The Spurs directly overtook the score. The situation for the Mavericks is in danger, but, at this time, Nowitzki's shot is also quite decisive. He shot straight from the outside, or the Golden Rooster is independent, and hit again. The Mavericks lead by 1 point. Then, the game between the two sides fell into a battle of positions again. Every attack and defense is a fierce battle with white knives going in and red knives going out. With 57 seconds left in the game, the gap between the two sides was still 1 point. Manu got inside like a fish, then made a layup and scored 2 points, helping the Spurs to overtake again. Score. Go ahead. The Spurs went ahead again. This game is really getting more and more exciting. Will there be a lure? At the last minute, this is the real decisive battle. Every ball is extremely important. In order to be safe, Rick Carlisle directly called a timeout, and the timeout was specifically arranged. When the timeout came back, the Mavericks directly played a wave of blitz. Darren Collison broke through with the ball to attract the defense, and scored the ball to the high position Dirk Nowitzki. Now Tianwang is a Golden Rooster independent, and another 2 points. In the last quarter, Nowitzki scored again and took over the game. There is only one timeout for the Spurs, and there are 44 seconds left in the game. Sovic saved this timeout and prepared to use it for the last ball. After several consecutive runs and passes, the Spurs played very patiently on offense, because the longer the 44 seconds, the more likely it was that the Spurs' last attack was made. In the end, Manu hit a mid-range jumper. At the critical moment, Manu's big heart withstood all the pressure. The Mavericks, who paused a lot of time, paused again and arranged a little bit. After returning, King Nyotian continued to withstand the pressure. With a scream, CIC hit again. The cheers of the American Airlines Arena have shook the floor. However, with 7 seconds left in the game, the Spurs still have a chance to attack. Timeout. The Spurs used up their last timeout. With 7 seconds left in the game, the Spurs have the right to the final attack. Lore. Can it appear? Everyone has the same question, but Yang Yi said everyone's question. Okay, guys, I won't say any more nonsense. This is our last chance to win, play, and kill them. After a pause, Vich directly started to boost morale, and the Spurs stared at Wei blankly. Odd, Vicky said with a smile, don't look at me anymore. No specific tactics, play. Find the chance. Then lore. Without specific tactics, Vich seemed very confident, but on the Mavericks side, Rick Carlisle was urgently arranging the last attack defense. To be continued. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 258. This site has opened a novel subscription function. You can subscribe to your favorite novels. If there are updates to the subscription novels, we will notify you by mail as soon as possible. Remember to set up your email address. Beep. With a whistle, the referee signaled that the timeout was over and the game restarted. Kawhi Leonard, who re-entered the field, began to serve from outside the sideline, but the Mavericks' formation suddenly changed. The two forwards went directly outside the three-point line and blocked the sideline position, waving their hands constantly, hindering the Spurs from serving. Time was 1 minute and 1 second, and Parker near the sideline ran back and forth, but it was difficult to receive the ball, because the Mavericks' two forward players also swayed back and forth and stopped directly in front of Parker. It was only 5 seconds away. Kawhi Leonard began to worry. Time is running out. If Kawhi Leonard doesn't send the ball will be gone. Yang Yi was also a little anxious. The Dallas fans on the sidelines began to boo, and this noise made Kawhi Leonard even more anxious. In a hurry, he directly threw the basketball out. Because don't throw the ball out again. Time is really gone. It's over. Leonard just slammed the basketball out. Yang Yi's face showed a trace of ruin. Leonard's pass didn't go towards any player at all, and the place where the ball was thrown was empty. At the top of the three-point arc, there is no one there. Therefore, the Spurs' lure shot seems to be over from this moment. Toot, toot, toot. The timer made a countdown sound, and the basketball flew all the way to the court amidst the panic expressions of everyone. Suddenly, a black light and shadow flew over to the basketball and grabbed the basketball. Angzi, Yang Yi exclaimed. He shot. A super three-pointer. A super long three-pointer. Angzi had to do this. When he got the basketball, the game time was less than 3 seconds. OM. The buzzer of the timer sounded, and an eternal scene was frozen on the basketball court. Angzi jumped in the air, and the basketball in his hand had already been shot. The basketball leaped high over the arena. As a result, countless Dallas fans on the sidelines stood up straight in the almost frozen air, staring at the constantly flying basketball, and did not relax for a moment. Huh. Scored. The ball has been scored. Lore. This is the lore. It's incredible. It's really incredible. In the desperate situation, Angzi stood up. He is the savior of San Antonio. The Dallas fans on the sidelines were full of incredible faces. At this moment, they couldn't make any sound. Rick Carlisle's expression also froze suddenly. Lore. He was actually killed. Looking at the San Antonio people celebrating wildly on the field, Rick Carlisle was upset. His layout was perfect enough and his strength. In his opinion, the Mavericks still have a huge gap in strength with the Spurs. This defeat made the Mavericks one step further away from the playoffs, and for Rick Carlisle, this season may have been doomed to be a failed season. Lore, another lore in Angzi's personal career. His big heart has been proven again. In the CCTV live broadcast room, Yang Yi was summing up the game. On the sidelines, Angzi was called by Vicky, and, "Follow me to the press conference." Angzi froze for a moment, but think about it, although he was not the best in the game, he took 19 shots, hit 12 goals, and finally scored 28 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals and 2 blocks. Throughout the game, Angzi's performance was very important. The outbreak of the critical moment in the second quarter and the last 3 seconds of the lore finally allowed the Spurs to complete the 20-point reversal and the final lore. With such an important and outstanding performance, it is understandable that Vich took him to the press conference after the game. Anxi went to the locker room to change his clothes, and followed Wiki to the site of the post-match press conference. A 20-point reversal and a super long 3-point lure. In this battle, Anxi made the limelight, and the Spurs post-match press conference naturally attracted many reporters. Vicky was the first to walk into the press conference, Anxi followed, and there was a burst of snapping photos. Doing a good job on stage, Vich summed up the game a bit and signaled the reporter to start asking questions. Mr. Vicky, you have completed a 20-point reversal in this game. What do you think now? The first question was the ESPN reporter. The questions asked were quite satisfactory. He knew that Vicky was old and cunning, and he didn't dare to take those things. Controversial questions come to Vich. Very good. Hearing this question, Vich nodded, and then only uttered these two words. The atmosphere at the scene was stagnant, and then, several reporters smiled on their faces. Well, this is the style of Vicky. Mr. Vich, the Spurs were 20 points behind in the first half of the game. What did you think at that time? Are you extremely dissatisfied with the performance of the main players? Not very good. Vicky gave another very short answer. The reporter who asked the question continued to ask, are you dissatisfied with the performance of the main players? Vich nodded, yes. Then how did you adjust next? The reporter was reluctant. I found a better way this time. The answer was a bit more, but it was still useless nonsense. What's the solution? The reporter struck Vich. So at this moment, Vich paused for a while. He looked down at the reporter, as if looking for the press card. The reporter stood tall and reported to his family, I'm Tim McMahon, a reporter from ESPN Dallas station. Listening to this reporter named Tim McMahon self-reporting his home, N11 smiled. It turned out that it was a reporter who was biased towards the Mavericks. No wonder he would go against Vich. Vich paused, and then said, Mr. McMahon, you are wasting my time. Now that time is gone, the question session about me is over. He didn't answer Tim McMahon's question directly, but Vicky ended the questioning session for him, and gave the rest of the time to Anxi, so this Tim McMahon turned his attention to Anxi again. Mr. Anxi, your performance in this game was perfect. The burst of the second quarter helped the Spurs start chasing points, and the final lure led the Spurs to victory. But you are not the best player in this game. May I ask you any ideas? Hearing this question, Anxi shook his head secretly. This Tim McMahon is obviously provoking. The best player in this game is Tim Duncan. He won in a direct duel with Dirk Nowitzki. With 24 points, 19 rebounds and 4 big caps, it can be said that he performed well. Although not as critical as Anxi, without Duncan's inside protection, the Spurs would not be able to win this game. To this question, Anxi's answer is simple, no idea. A simple answer, obviously Anxi is already the true biography of Shendu Iki. The other reporters laughed, and Vicky also smiled. There was only one McMahon, his face flushed, and he seemed very unconvinced with the Mavericks' defeat in this game. To be continued. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Role Player. Author, Yuen Sanbuletinji. Chapter 259. On February 1, 2013, all the games in January were played. After the highlights in November, the Spurs lost a lot of games in December and January. Therefore, when the media selected, the Western Conference was the best in these 2 months. Giadu was snatched by Thunder. The player of the month of December is Russell Westbrook, and the player of the month of January is Kevin Durant. As for the best coach of December and January, it is naturally Scott Brooks. But the Spurs don't care about these monthly awards, and various rotations are enough to prove this. On the same day, NBA officially announced the results of the All-Star voting, which attracted a lot of attention. After 2 months of global voting, The results are also out. The Lakers' Kobe Bryant is the biggest vote in this All-Star game, but his lead is not big, only more than the second LeBron James. With 10,000 votes, it may be the All-Star with the least number of votes in the past. An 11 also appeared on the voting list. He participated in the All-Star vote as a forward, so in the end Anxi got 170,000 votes, surpassing David Lee, Dirk Nowitzki and others, and ranked in Ibaka. Asik and Rudy Gay, ranked 10th among Western forwards. It should be said that Anxi's ranking is relatively normal. In the top 10, except for Asik, the strength and statistics of other players must be higher than Anxi. However, as soon as the results of this vote are announced, Chinese fans will not let it go. The final vote for Dignity Greater China is only 170,000. Who am I kidding? Yes, does NBA officially count votes in the Asian region? It is estimated that just over 170,000 votes in a Tiger Flutter forum, right? I voted once a day, and I voted for 2 months. I voted for 60 votes by myself, and the number of votes is tens of millions. The king of votes is also at your fingertips. This number of votes is too fake. Yeah, not to mention Hyupu, the number of fans of Anxi Postbar has exceeded 10,000, one person has 1 vote, and there are 10,000 votes. Speaking of posts, Anxi has millions of fans on Weibo. Even if you remove the dead fans, 1 person, 1 vote, 1 million votes, right? Questions continue to be heard from China. In fact, some people have guessed the final truth. Anxi in the United States knows very well that this number of votes actually only counts the number of votes on the US side. The reason why the NBA official will give up on the Chinese side the number of votes for Anxi is that they found that Anxi's final vote was too terrifying. Calculated by 1:1, Anxi's votes in China have reached hundreds of millions. You know, the vote King Kobe has only 1.59 million votes. If Anxi has more than 100 million votes, it will not turn the sky, so David Stern quietly removed the votes in China in order not to turn the sky. Anxi was only ranked 10th among forwards in the Western Conference. This ranking made it difficult for Anxi to enter the final All-Star game, especially since the head coach of the All-Star this time was Vicky. Yes, the head coach of this All-Star game is still Vich. Although the Spurs are only second in the Western Conference, there is no way, because last season, when the Spurs were the first time, Vich was the All-Star leader last season. Coach, so last season's All-Star coach was Scott Brooks. But this season, the Thunder has the first record, but Scott Brooks is not re-elected because of the All-Star coach, so only Vich will be the All-Star coach. Vicky serves as the head coach of the All-Stars, and Anxi can imagine that players on the Spurs side would not go if they could not go to the All-Stars. At present, the top players in the Spurs lineup include Tony Parker, who is 7th in the back line, Tim Duncan, who is 4th in the forward line, and Anxi, who is the 10th forward in the forward line. Parker and Duncan, but both Parker and Duncan's endorsement contract have reward clauses for entering the All-Star game, only Anxi does not. Therefore, Anxi is given up. Parker and Duncan may be selected. After all, even Vicky cannot stop the players from making money. The All-Star vote, the domestic quarrels were upset, but the NBA officials were indifferent. After all, the Chinese market is important, but this voting event is not a big event. David Stern is unwilling to explain in person. It can only be so delayed, time will make everything pass away. Of course, the most important thing is that Anxi doesn't care about the All-Star game, because Anxi feels that he wants to be in the All-Star game, and there is no need to pass the vote of the fans. To enter, Anxi also has to use his strength to enter. However, Anxi could not participate in the All-Star game. Anxi had received invitations from other competitions. Needless to say, the Rookie Challenge, in addition to the three-point contest and slam dunk contest, was the same as last season. Anxi was invited again. Angzi has already participated in the 3-point contest once, and this time Angzi will definitely not participate again. The dunk contest Angzi thinks it can try, so when there is more than half a month before the All-Star weekend, Angzi has already decided to participate this time. The All-Star Dunk Contest and Rookie Challenge are out. Angzi didn't have much time to pay attention to the All-Star voting controversy, because Angzi suddenly realized that he has a more important thing to do. Menachem Rabin, who is in Los Angeles, called to report on the latest developments of AP 1 year after AP was acquired by Angzi. It finally entered the European market and now has a certain market share in South America and Australia. Now, finally we have reached the final step, the acquisition. At present, the big boss of AP is negotiating with Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft. Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft are all interested in acquiring the AP that occupies most of the mobile instant messaging market. Now it is up to which party has a higher bid. Menachem Rabin called Angzi to make Angzi think about whether, after the acquisition, Angzi's investment should be cashed out in proportion to the shares, or whether it should continue to be held at the current market value. This question really needs to be pondered. According to Rabin, the total amount of this acquisition will not be less than $1.8 billion, and Angzi owns AP 5% of the shares. In this way, at least discounted Angzi can get $900 million. Yes, this is a huge sum of money, and if you don't cash out and continue to hold it, Angzi is also a little doubtful that the company it will take over can maintain the market value of AP, but with the help of companies like Apple, it is not impossible for the market value to rise. Even Angzi feels that the market value is more likely to rise, so Angzi is still a bit hesitant. One person thought that it was naturally difficult to draw a final conclusion, so Angzi decided to give the final decision to Abby. Before going to bed at night, watching Abby clean up the room, N11 mentioned this. "Abby, do you remember the investment in AP last year?" Abby kept doing things. She nodded. "What's the matter?" "Now my classmate is ready to sell. It may be sold to Microsoft, Apple, or Facebook. Now there are two options, one is to cash out, and the other is to keep holding. How do you choose?" Angzi looked at Abby, as if the important task of this choice was entrusted to you. Abby didn't disappoint Angzi either. After thinking about it a little bit, she said, "Cash out, get the money, and make more investments." As a result, the cash out issue was settled. Compared with Angzi, Abby did not have a choice problem. "Then cash it out, but my husband, I have earned so much money, don't you reward me?" N11 smiled evilly on his face, and Abby exclaimed, and in a short while, a voice of despair came from the room. To be continued. 8 Super Role Player. Author, Yuen San Buletinji. Chapter 260. Bradley Beal is the prospect of this year, hailed as the future of the league's shooting guard. In recent years, excellent point guards in the NBA have emerged, and there have been many excellent point guards. It seems that a point guard event is about to come. But shooting guards are a bit lonely. After the 4 major shooting guards are getting older, the only truly outstanding shooting guards are now Kobe and Wade, who are at the end of their careers, plus Harden that broke out this year, star-level scoring. There are only so few guards left, so people began to look forward to the emergence of new super shooting guards. Bradley Beal played very well in his rookie season. As of now, he has averaged 14 points, 4 rebounds and 3 assists per game. As a physical shooter, Bradley Beal is generally favored by the outside world, and many people even it is believed that Bradley Beal will be the next Reggie Miller. And the competition with Bill is his rookie Dion Waiters of the same year. Bill is the next Reggie Miller, then Waiters is the next Wade. The Spurs' opponent in the first game in February was the Wizards, who drafted Bill. The Wizards have steadily improved over the past 2 years, a bit like the Thunder. Before Derrick Rose was injured, he won the regular season MVP, which attracted John Wall to go to Haikou, and he also won the regular season MVP during his rookie contract. He suddenly became a well-known big talker in the league. Bradley Beal seems to have inherited the fine tradition of his predecessors. Before hitting the Spurs, he actually challenged Anzi. "I know Anzi, he is the strongest defender in the NBA, but he can't prevent me. Yes, my goal is to become a super shooting guard in the future. Anzi will be my stepping stone and I will step on it. His defense is high." Bradley Beal's big words made an 11 shook his head, but he didn't respond either. An 11 was still very disdainful of this kind of child bickering response. However, before playing the Wizards, Vich had a rotation and all GDP truce, but this game was one of the few Spurs broadcast games in the United States. As a result, this approach before the game was full of controversy. In an interview with reporters, Vicky, who participated in the pre-match press conference, explained the reason for his rotation of GDP. "Parker has been selected for the All-Star, and he has become a little dragged, so I suppressed him on the bench to prevent him from being too crazy. Give him a lesson, Manu, he wants to renegotiate the contract. I order him, sit down, I won't talk nonsense with you." What about Tim Duncan? Tim. He doesn't like to talk a lot, so I told him, whenever you can say 10 sentences a day, I will let him play in a national broadcast game. But unfortunately, he only said 2 things yesterday. Sentence. Vicky's nonsensical explanation can't calm the anger of media reporters at all. You know, this is a national broadcast. It's not a casual game, just let the absolute main players take turns to rest, which is the most intolerable for this group of media reporters. Therefore, before the game, the protests against the Spurs almost overturned the ceiling of the AT&T Arena. Before the game started, Vich looked at the 3 GDP in suits, and said with a smile, "Today Tim and the rest of the 3 took turns. It was almost noisy outside. It seems that the 3 of you still have a lot of fans. So many people do it for you. The number of fans is comparable to Kobe Bryant and LeBron James." Everyone let out a collective chuckle, and Anzi followed with a smile. He felt that Vicky's words simply blackened the group of reporters outside. The meaning of Vich's words is very obvious. Whether the main players are on the court is naturally determined by the head coach. Why should the media reporters interfere? Well, let's not talk about the things that saddened him and the others. Let's talk about the starting point of this game. In this game, starting point guard Patrick Mills, starting shooting guard Danny Green, starting small forward Kawhi Leonard, power forward Boris Diaw and center Thiago Splitter. Although the GDP was rotated, Anzi still failed to start. The game was held at the AT&T Arena. Bradley Beal, who provoked Anzi before the game, was booed by Spurs fans while warming up on the sidelines. There are still many Anzi fans in San Antonio. There are 200 to 300 Chinese fans in every game. There are also those San Antonio local fans who think Anzi is Manu's successor. The total is estimated to be 400 to 500. The AT&T Arena can accommodate a total of 18,000 fans, and Anzi's fans alone account for about 500, which is comparable to the Kobe Bryant fans next to Staples Arena. So a large number of Anzi fans gave Bradley Beal the most sincere greetings. Then, the game began. Anzi was a substitute, Bradley Beal was also. The Wizards' starting shooting guard is Martell Webster, a swingman who is also a three-point shooter. In addition to Webster, the Wizards' starting point guard is John Wall, the small forward is Trevor Ariza, the power forward is Imka Okafor, and the center is Nene Gelario. At the beginning of the game, the Wizards, under the leadership of John Wall, barely drew a tie with the Spurs who had rotated the GDP. In fact, John Wall, although he keeps talking, he still has his strength. At least Trevor Ariza, a player who was nicknamed Tiza by Chinese fans before, has gained a new life in the Wizards. With John Wall's pass, Ariza has also become a shooter with more than 40% of three-pointers. John Wall added a great bonus to the shooters. The game hit the middle of the first quarter. Under the organization of John Wall, the Wizards shooter group began to show off. Martell Webster ran out of an open position, and John Wall's pass came afterwards, with a scream and a three-pointer, and the Wizards took the lead. Then, Mills broke through with the ball, layup, and hit the iron. The Wizards inside and inside grabbed a rebound. It was Wall again. He hit the ball and found the mid-range NEI, who scored 2 points in a mid-range shot. The points difference widened further, and at this time, Vich called a timeout in time. Wizards scored 5 points in a row. Vich's timeout is very timely. We see what adjustments the next two teams will make. This game is a live broadcast of Cena Sports, and K-Fan said directly when he saw the Spurs paused. And Ma Jian, a guest commentator next to him, guessed, at this time, the Spurs should be replaced by Angzi. They didn't play any GDP in this game. The Spurs still need Angzi's offensive firepower. Randy Huey from the Wizards side determined should also be replaced by Bradley Beal. With Wall on the court, the Wizards must have more shooters on the court, especially now that the Wizards are in good shape. It is precisely when they need to continue to expand their points. It has to be said that as a retired player who has mixed in the United States, Ma Jian is a professional, in a few words, and guessed the next adjustment of the two teams. The Spurs did change to Angzi, and McGrady played with Angzi, who replaced Danny Green, and Angzi replaced Leonard. On the Wizards side, Ariza topped the power forward position, Bill played, replaced Okafor, and the Wizards put up a large and 4 small lineup. In this way, Angzi confronted Bradley Beal, who was ranting before the game.